Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to start this talk by introducing three seemingly unrelated situations. Situation number one. This is Lagos in Nigeria. It's a city that now has 20 to 25 million inhabitants. Commuters in Lagos face incredibly inefficient transportation and some of the worst traffic in the world. It's so bad that when you ask locals for tips on how to avoid traffic, you're likely to hear a response like, try to drive only between midnight and 4 in the morning. That's how bad it's become. Situation number two. Some children are doing their homework or reading in the dark. They're part of the more than 1 billion people in the world who don't have access to electricity. Situation number three. A child who lost family members to Ebola is playing in a childcare center in an Ebola treatment unit in Guinea. What do these three situations have in common? Well, for one thing, they all depict problems which are at least partly information problems. Now, what do I mean by information problem? Well, when you think about it, with better information on how people move or want to move in a city, we would be able to plan and build infrastructure in an optimal way. Let me be clear, information alone is no magic bullet that's going to solve all of our transportation issues, but urban mobility can be significantly improved through smart and coherent infrastructure planning, traffic management, and public transport planning. What do you need for smart and coherent planning? You need information. You need reliable and timely information. Coming back to our situation number two, the children reading in the dark. If policymakers and businesses knew in which places they could find the right kind of population density, the right kind of economic development and demographics to sustain either access to the electric grid or what we call a mini-grid, which is a small independent power station, or even household solar panels, like pay-and-go solar panels, they would be able to push and to deploy the right kind of energy solutions to the right places faster and better. In the third situation, the Ebola situation, if public health actors knew early enough who is infected with a virulent transmissible disease and who is likely to be affected next, they would be able to respond to this outbreak before it reaches the catastrophic proportions of the one that struck West Africa 2 years ago. Now, this is not to say that information alone can solve these problems. Of course not. Of course, even after having the right information, you still need the right resources to be able to tackle each one of these problems. But the right response to important social questions must always start with the right information. In developing countries, especially the poorest countries, information has historically been scarce. How does a city planner in Kinshasa know where to build a new road? How does an organization fighting Ebola know where the virus is going to strike next? Until recently, the answer to both of these questions was pretty reactive rather than proactive. Stakeholders were making assumptions, perhaps gathering survey data, and maybe feeding this survey data into mobility models. But the problem with this approach is that survey data is extremely expensive to collect, and therefore it's almost never updated. And in addition, it only covers a small sample of the population. So you end up with some of the most important decisions in the country being made on data that's often out of date or unreliable. But things are changing. In the past few years, we've seen the phenomenal rise of digital technologies, and not just in rich countries, but also we've seen developing countries leapfrog older technologies like fixed-line telephones. 50% of Africans or more now have access to a mobile phone, and this is a percentage that's rising steadily every year. Of course, this has very direct benefits. For example, farmers can know the price that they can find for their crops on different markets before having to actually physically go there. Migrant workers can keep in touch with their loved ones, with their families. Money can be exchanged over long distances safely through mobile money, which enables commerce, enables remittances, and so on. So what does that have to do with this information scarcity problem that I was mentioning? Well, these digital technologies also have a more hidden benefit. Digital devices leave digital traces, and these digital traces can be used to inform the most impactful decisions taken in countries rich or poor. Let me give you a few examples. The way that people use their mobile phones can tell us about their economic situation, because we can look at aggregated top-up patterns, or aggregated mobile money transfers, or aggregated remittances. And we can see, for example, if there is a sharp drop in income in a specific village or in a specific region. And this, in turn, enables us to perhaps detect a food security situation, a food crisis somewhere. Mobile phone data also tells us about mobility, because we can look at which antennas phones connect to. And so we can see and understand the movement of the entire population in a country basically in real time. We can do that over long periods and long distances, for example, to study migration. That's the screenshot that you see on the left. It's an application that we built in Zambia. Or you can do it over short distances and short periods of times, for example, one day. And that's what you see on the screenshot on the right of an application that we built in Uganda to monitor traffic in the capital city. This gives us insights such as how many people move from A to B, at what time, at what speed, using which routes, etc. If we can see and understand the mobility of the population in real time, we can use this to predict the spread of communicable diseases. You see, mosquitoes don't travel very far. So when a communicable disease is transmitted over more than a few hundred meters, it's usually because it's been carried by a human. The same human, the same person who is probably carrying a mobile phone. And the nice thing for privacy is that you don't need to know the identity of the person. You don't need to know who is infected, as long as you can estimate how many people who are infected are traveling and where they are going to. This information, where they are going to, allows us to build models that can estimate how many new cases of a disease like Ebola are going to pop up in which places. The right implementation of this kind of technology can potentially save thousands of lives in a crisis such as the one that struck West Africa a few years ago. I'll give you one last example, which is also related to public health. This is a screenshot of an application that we built also in Zambia, which enables us to simulate what happens if we completely eradicate malaria in a specific area. So in this case, we've simulated eradicating malaria in the red circle. And what we see is the impact on malaria incidence in the rest of the country. What's interesting is that an intervention that's localized in this red circle actually has an impact on almost the entire country. Some places more than others. These are the red and orange places. But almost on the entire country. Why? Because less people infected with malaria would be traveling to these areas and infecting new people. These are the kind of insights that are very valuable if you're trying to know where to strike malaria first. Which places do you focus on if you want to gradually reduce the geographical footprint of a disease like malaria? So these are just a few examples of things that our team at Delberg Data Insights has been working on. But there is a vision much greater than us here. The amount of data that is being generated is going to massively increase. Feature phones are going to gradually be replaced by smartphones, even in the poorest countries, and these smartphones capture a lot more information. Objects such as cars are going to be ever more packed with sensors and connected to the internet as well. Satellite imagery is going to become cheaper and more precise, allowing us to do things like monitor the quality and the health of crops that are growing in the fields, which is also something that can tell us about the food security of a region a few months in advance. There are many possible uses for these new data sources and the new algorithms that are going to run on them. Not all of them are good ideas. For example, ever greater intrusion into your private data for the purpose of ever more targeted advertising might not be the best idea. But there are many other ideas that have the potential to transform the lives of millions, especially in places where traditionally little data existed. However, most of this data currently is and is going to stay in private hands. It's in the hands of mobile phone operators. It's in the hands of tech companies who build applications that people love and use, like Facebook, like Waze, like Google. It's in the hands of utility companies and so on. And all of these companies are rightfully very concerned about the privacy of their customers, but also about the competitive edge that lies in this data. We can build bridges between these private data sources and the public need for it by setting up rigorous and transparent privacy policies that enable us to anonymize and aggregate data to a point where the privacy of users and the competitive edges of business are fully protected. Organizations like ours can start building this ecosystem for shared data. We can become the trusted partners that will build this ecosystem. We do not need to get private data out of the servers of these private companies. We can simply leave this data there, this raw data, where it currently sits safely behind a firewall. And we can bring onto this data our algorithms that are going to distill only the non-private and socially useful insights necessary for social impact. We are already doing this with some mobile phone operators. We are doing this with satellite imagery. But we want this to be a societal change and not something that we drive alone. In a connected world, the most important decisions in society are taken better and faster because we all generate and we all share the necessary information. We can all do our part. If you are a company that collects interesting data, you can choose to let a trusted partner bring their algorithms onto your data and only extract these socially valuable insights that don't threaten privacy. If you are a data scientist, you can join or create projects like ours. If you are a government, you can set up the regulatory framework that allows the benefits of such data to be shared without the risks for privacy. And you can also encourage companies in your country to take part in such initiatives. If we all do this, we can trigger a data revolution, putting the power of such data into the hands of humanitarian NGOs, of development organizations, and other public actors who truly need it. When we do this, we will give our private data a truly public impact. Thank you.